Whalen and Brandon Kravitz here. You're listening to the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Pod. A lot to get to today. We got a couple of game ones last night to discuss. The Boston Celtics, as we expected, jump in all over the Cleveland Cavaliers. A 120-95 win for Boston last night. We'll talk a little bit about the late game as well, which was competitive for like three quarters until Oklahoma City pulled away. Not a ton of shot making for the Dallas Mavericks last night. But we'll recap both of those games. We'll give you a preview of Pacers-Knicks game 2. We'll also go deep on the Orlando Magic. We do have our official Orlando Magic insider here, Brandon Kravitz. So we'll talk about their season, put a bow on that series, round 1 against the Cavs, and then what comes next in a big summer, a potentially transformative summer for the Orlando Magic. But first, we are presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states across the country. It's so simple to play on Prize Picks. We're playing on there every single night during the NBA season. I can make my picks. I can submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. I will say I definitely take longer than 60 seconds, Brandon. Like, that's all well and good. I don't know who these people are that are just like, boom, boom, boom. I'm throwing it in there. Like, I'm submitting my entries in like 60 minutes. I'm doing all kinds of research on RotoWire picks and kind of checking out all the offerings on Prize Picks. But if you are one of those people, you can submit it. You could probably do it in like 30 seconds if you really want, because all you have to do is click more or less on at least 2 player stats, and then you just watch the winnings roll in. What are we looking at tonight, Brandon? You've been our Prize Picks guy, our guru, if you will, our shaman throughout the NBA season. What are we looking at for this 2-game slate tonight?
I appreciate that. I've gone a little bit icy the last 2 days, so the pride is hurt, but the preparation.
I saw people getting at you on Twitter. They don't understand. They don't understand the amount of pressure that you're under.
5 days a week, five days a week, 2 picks per day. That's 10 picks per week that I'm trying to nail, and the overall percentage is pretty good. But yeah, it does stick out like a sore thumb when you have a couple of losing days in a row. But just like shooters shoot, bettors bet, and that's what we're gonna do here. Jalen Brunson taking up so much of the attention on that Indiana defense, and for good reason. I was looking at his number, 37.5, a little bit too rich for my blood. So I'm going to go with sort of like a subsidiary of that, which is OG Anunoby to shoot some wide open threes because of the pressure that Jalen Brunson puts on that defense. OG Anunoby for more than 1.5 made threes. He's hit this 3 games in a row, 4 of his last 5.
Love it.
And I'm pairing that. I'm going all 3 balls today. I'm going to pair that with a fade on Tyrese Halliburton, who has not been the same player since the All-Star break. I don't know why. Is it an injury? Is it mental? He looks fine to me, but it's just not there. And part of that is his long-range shooting. 2.5 made threes. That has a mark that he has struggled to hit night after night in the playoffs. So I'm going to take him for less than 2.5 made threes. I'm going more for OG, less for Hallie.
All right. There we go. He's only hit that, or he's only gone more than that number in 5 of his last 12. I don't know what's going on with Halliburton. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I do think he has taken the mantle as the worst dressed player in the NBA. I don't know if that's a factor in his shooting. Could be the back injury, could be the clothing. Who knows? But those are the picks for tonight. You can check out Brandon's full breakdown. You can find those videos 7 days a week on the RotoWire Twitter accounts. I jump in on the weekends. Our guy Kirian gives out some picks on Sundays. It's been a lot of fun. And obviously check out the RotoWire picks tool, rotowire.com/picks to give you everything you need to win on Prize Picks. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, an enormous selection of players and stat types. That's what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. And here's the best part. If you download the app, where you just go to prizepicks.com and you put in our code ROTOPOD, ROTOPOD, it'll get you a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code ROTOPOD, ROTOPOD. First deposit match up to $100. So you put in 100, Prize Picks will match that. You have to play with that $100 before you can withdraw. But either way, it's a great deal. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy over on Prize Picks. All right, Brandon, let's get into it. Celtics, Cavs. We talked a lot in round 1 about Cavs Magic kind of being the Lifetime Network series, the one that, maybe if you have some yard work to do, if you're someone like me who likes to, maybe go hit some golf balls in the evening, it's like, all right, that's the series I'm okay with. Maybe I'll just catch the second half, or I'll watch the condensed game. Weirdly, I kind of felt the same way about Celtics Heat, because I just felt like I knew how it was going to play out. And that's now carrying over to round 2. I was actually at the range last night, streaming the game on my phone. I'm like, I really want to lock in. I want to be home. I want to watch every second of Mavs-Thunder. But the Celtics team, man, is just such a wagon. This game played out, I think, about exactly like most people expected. I will say Cleveland got off to a hotter start. One of my plays last night was Celtics -4 in the first quarter, which ended up hitting, but it was a little bit dicier than I thought it would be. Donovan Mitchell, double-digit points in the first quarter. Cavs put up 34 in that period, but Boston goes for 40. They start hot. They've been a great first quarter team throughout the postseason. And, really this was a game that, both teams kind of struggled in the second quarter. It was a bit lower scoring. Cavs were still hanging around at the half, but Boston just, slowly bled out this Cavs team. And I don't want to oversimplify things, Brandon, but I feel like this is kind of already a microcosm or a preview of how the rest of this series plays out.
Yeah, this is a really bad matchup for the Cleveland Cavaliers. They made 65 threes in their series with the Magic. That went 7 games.
That's bad. They shot 28% from three.
The Celtics made 75. I think it was 70 or 75 in the 5 games they played against the Miami Heat. This is a math problem type of series for the Cavs. I also think one of the things I learned in watching Cleveland against the Magic, over the course of 7 games, I guess they were the better team. I would argue the Magic, and I think the statistics actually back this up, that the Magic were the better basketball team. But the Cavs had home court advantage, and they have the more seasoned star in Donovan Mitchell. One of the things I learned, though, is that when things are going poorly for Cleveland, they tend to wrap it up. This is not a team. They're not like Miami. That is just like, it doesn't matter what the score is. They're constantly going to fight and make you work for every basket. The Cavs will throw in the towel. They will wave the white flag in the middle of the game. I think we're going to see a lot of blowouts in this series. The Cavs will be in it a couple of times, but the second things go sideways, they're going to fold up shop. And the Boston Celtics feast off of teams like that. That's why they've had as many 40-point wins as they've had over the course of the season. So I think they're going to smell blood like they did last night. It's going to happen several times. This will not be the first or only blowout of this series.
Of course, no Jared Allen. Once again, for the Cavaliers, that's now 4 straight absences for him. And I do think that matters, right? I mean, Jared Allen, you could argue, was, I think, pretty easily their second best player when he was available in round 1. And I think that's where, with no Porzingis for Boston, that would be the one, and I use this term pretty lightly here, advantage that the Cavs might have is, all right, we start 2 big men, you're down one of your big men, maybe there's something we can take advantage of there. But without Jared Allen, I think that's kind of a washout. This really reminds me of like those like 2015 or really like 2014 through 2018 Cavaliers runs through the Eastern Conference, where you just knew, I think there was one year they fell behind 0-2 to the Raptors, and you're like, LeBron's going to find a way. That they are far and away the best team in the Eastern Conference. Like, this path that Boston has in front of it on the way to the finals, I don't think the Knicks or the Pacers are going to mount that much of a challenge to the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. I think if it's New York specifically, they'll find ways to stay in these games, to maybe grind out a win or maybe 2 in that series. But Boston just has such an advantage talent-wise over all 3 teams remaining in the Eastern Conference. I've been saying it all along. I would be shocked if this team doesn't find its way to the finals with relative ease. So I have a hard time even breaking down the series. It's just, look, unless Boston has a disastrous shooting game all around, or unless the Cavaliers have one of those games like Miami did in game 2, where they hit 22 or 23 3-pointers, like that's kind of the recipe here for the Cavs, right? Is I think they took 42 threes, which is the right thing. You got to be taking 40 plus, I think, in any game in the series. The problem is they only hit 11 of them last night, so they actually lowered their playoff 3-point percentage. I think, when someone like Max Strus is out there, he's got to be chucking away. He was 1 of 5 from 3 last night. The Cavs got almost no production from their bench. Karis LeVert played 26 minutes. He was a -19, 2 of 6 from the field. Sam Merrill, who's out there for one thing and one thing only, he goes 0 for 4 from 3. I think volume 3-point shooting is really the only way the Cavs are going to be able to stay in this series. We do need to talk about Derek White, by the way. Has Derek White been the Celtics' best player so far in the playoffs?
Inarguably, yeah. I mean, Tatum is still the most valuable player on the team, but Derek White has been the best player I think the stats would probably back that up. And this is a team that shoots a ton of threes, as we know. They're volume 3-point shooting team. And look at last night; he was 7 of 12. I think I heard a stat in the middle. This is in the middle of the game, so I don't know where it stands right now. Where he was like 20 of his last 26 at one point. He's unconscious right now, so hard to argue with that. And he's a good defensive player.
Yeah, I mean, he's played 6 games so far in the postseason, and he ranks inside the top 20 in the NBA in total points scored in the postseason. He's outscored Jason Tatum. I mean, he's been the Celtics' leading scorer so far in these playoffs, shooting 58% from the field. He's 28 for 56 from beyond the arc as well, so shooting 50% from deep. I mean, it's been an incredible run for Derek White, which, obviously, like you said, Jason Tatum is still, in my opinion, by far the Celtics' best player, but he hasn't had to do much so far, right? There hasn't really been a single game where it's like, all right, Jason Tatum, we need you to carry us, right? I mean, the Celtics have just breezed through, 5 of their 6 games so far. Jaylen Brown, 12 of 18 last night for 32, 6 boards, 2 assists for him as well. I predicted a sweep coming in. I still feel pretty confident about that. Again, I think for the Cavs to take a game in this series, it's going to take one of those anomaly shooting nights, which they just haven't proven remotely capable of right now. I do think they have slightly better personnel than what was left for the Miami Heat, but overall, I don't know that this Cavs team is markedly better than the Heat. Even if you take away Jimmy Butler and Terry Rozier and Jaime Jaquez, I think the coaching advantage, the depth advantage that the Heat have, I don't know if this is that big of a level up in competition for the Celtics.
I tend to just disagree as far as, okay, with them not having Jimmy Butler on the floor. If Jimmy's on the floor, then I would agree. Eric Spoelstra gets the most out of these random NBA players, so it's kind of hard to quantify that. But the Cavs do have talent. I think they win a game. Let's also not forget this was a terrible spot for them. They were coming off of a Game 7, 1 day's rest. Boston's been sitting back for 6 days waiting for this. So the rest advantage heavily tilts towards Boston. Home court advantage tilts towards Boston, and they're the better team. This was always going to be a blowout. I don't think they're all going to track like this. You'll have more blowouts than you don't have blowouts in this series. But look, the Boston Celtics lost to a Jimmy Butler-less Miami Heat team. They can fall asleep at the wheel sometimes. As good as they are, I think sometimes they get a little bit lazy. And you've seen Jason Tatum, 5 from 3-point range. Like, at some point that could come back to bite you. I think the Cavs take one. Nice gentleman's sweep here.
Okay, well, if you want to bet that exact result, Brandon, you could get Celtics to win the series in 5 at plus 175 at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Celtics in 4 is plus 110. Celtics in 6 plus 550. Cavs to win the series in 5, by the way, is 100 to 1. So if you think the Cavs, bounce back here and take the next 4, maybe that's where the value is at. But this,
or you could light your money on fire.
Or
whatever you choose.
You could just throw it out the window or throw it in the garbage. That's another option. All right, let's move on to the late game last night. Dallas and OKC. Really fun game for 3 quarters. I mean, this was back and forth. Felt like it was within 4 to 6 points one way or the other for most of the game. It certainly felt like Oklahoma City was in control, was setting the tone. I think got better all-around performances from most of its roster compared to Dallas. Not a great shooting night for Luka Doncic. 6 of 19 from the field, 6 of 10 at the line. He started 1 of 4 at the free throw line, 1 of 8 from beyond the arc. He has struggled shooting the 3 so far throughout these playoffs. Relatively quiet night for Kyrie Irving as well. Only 14 shots in 37 minutes. Got to have a higher volume out of Kyrie. I think the Thunder did an excellent job defensively. And, we talked on Monday with Alex about some of the personnel that OKC has defensively. I think they actually match up really well with this Dallas team. And, I thought Dallas did a decent job defensively until, Jalen Williams started cooking late and, Oklahoma City really pulled away. But the number one thing that stuck out to me is the versatility that OKC has on the defensive end. Their switchability, right? Like I was really watching early on. It's like, all right, who's guarding who? What are they doing in the half court? And, you want Lou Dort matching up on Luka Doncic, but what I noticed is in transition, they're just kind of, there's just a lot of like, all right, you take him. It doesn't matter that Lou Dort's supposed to be guarding Luka Doncic. It was, all right, Jalen Williams, you're right there. You pick him up. SGA, all right, on this possession, you'll take him. Chet Holmgren, was guarding Luka at times. They have so many options to throw at not only Luka, but also Kyrie. Alex brought up a good point. Like, do we see more Cason Wallace in this series? In theory, he's a pretty good matchup for Kyrie. And we did. We saw 23 minutes off the bench for Cason Wallace. Hit a couple of threes. Obviously, he's not somebody you're expecting a ton out of offensively. But when he was up there, or when he was on the court, I should say, he was picking up Kyrie Irving 94 feet. And, obviously Kyrie is capable of getting by anybody, but he made life hard on him, right? And I think OKC has so many bodies to match up with those two guys specifically that I was on Dallas last night. I thought the Mavs experience would show through here. I thought this would be a bigger jump up in competition for the Thunder compared to that Pelicans team that they faced in round one, but this was an emphatic win.
OKC still has not allowed a team to score 100 points in the playoffs now. They're
95 is the most points they've allowed in the playoffs so far last night.
Yeah, and you nailed it. Like, it's because of their depth and the way that they're built. They just throw size, speed, skill, and length at you at every single direction. And the matchup for Dallas, the area I was worried about for Dallas is, are they able to pick up the pace or keep up with the pace of an Oklahoma City Thunder team that anybody that grabs a rebound, and these are two of the worst rebounding teams in the league. So a part of the advantage was going to come down to who actually rebounds the ball better. Last night, it was the Oklahoma City Thunder. They won the rebounding battle 52-39. And then they're going to go out and they're going to push the pace because everybody who grabs that rebound can run. And Dallas is not really known for their ability to dart down the court. I thought then, and that is part of the reason why it seemed like OKC was never out of sorts. They don't get sped up. They speed you up. They're always in control. They don't turn the ball over very much. Too many for Dallas. They had 15 last night. And that was exactly the way Dallas can't play if they're going to go toe-to-toe with this Oklahoma City Thunder team. I do think that athletically, with guys like Daniel Gafford, I thought played well, really well last night. That kind of guy is going to keep them in this series. But if Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic don't go off, they don't have the depth that OKC does. OKC can get double digits from anybody they throw out there, and that's just not the case for Dallas.
Yeah, I think you said it really well. I wanted to bring up Gafford. We did wonder, would we see more Daniel Gafford? Do we see more size in general from the Mavs, trying to kind of offset an OKC team that really only has, I think, one big guy that they trust in Chet Holmgren, although the other Jalen Williams continues to play well, man. He played 17 minutes off the bench. He was 5 of 7 from the floor, knocked down a 3, had 9 boards. He's I think becoming an option that we have to start taking seriously, and kind of making me look dumb for saying they should have added somebody other than Bismack Biyombo at the deadline to bring more depth at center. But yeah, you mentioned the rebounding advantage. Part of that is like when Dallas is shooting sub 40%, like there's just a lot more available defensive rebounds for the Thunder. So it didn't necessarily feel to me like, man, the Thunder are just owning the glass. Both teams actually had a ton of offensive boards. OKC had 16 offensive rebounds, but Dallas had 11, which is that's not that big of a discrepancy. The other thing we've kept coming back to, man, is who's the third option for the Mavs, right? And Daniel Gafford, gave him 16 and 11 with 5 blocks. Like, he was really good, but it wasn't like, all right, he's our third scorer. Everything Daniel Gafford does is around the rim, right? It's finishing lobs, it's finishing off pick and roll passes, it's second chance opportunities. He's not somebody that you're going to ask to go get a bucket. PJ Washington started this game strong, only ended up taking 7 shots, only played 26 minutes, had some foul trouble. Derek Jones, not really a guy who you can rely on offensively. Josh Green, gave them decent minutes off the bench, but they're still searching for that option. And, we saw Tim Hardaway back in the mix after missing a few games due to injury. He went 0 for 4 from 3, and they absolutely need Tim Hardaway to give them something. The other thing that stood out was the OKC bench, right? I think that the Mavs starters versus the Thunder starters, like that was a relatively even matchup for most of the game. When things turned is when Isaiah Joe came in and goes 2 of 3 from beyond the arc. Aaron Wiggins, had one of his best games in a while. He goes 3 for 4 from beyond the arc. OKC had 7 players hit multiple threes in this game, whereas Dallas goes 12 of 35 from beyond the arc.
Yeah, and Dallas just isn't going to win that battle. That's not where they're going to win. I don't think they're going to find that third guy. We didn't see him arrive against the Clippers. I don't think he's going to magically appear against the Oklahoma City Thunder. So you're going to lose the bench battle. You're going to lose who's the third guy. That's why Kyrie and Luka both have to put up about 30 a night in order for this team to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder. I also think they just need to add a little bit of scrap. That's been the annoying part about Dallas for the last couple of years, really since they lost Jalen Brunson, because Jalen Brunson's a scrappy player, and we certainly might have appreciated him. We definitely didn't appreciate him enough while he was on that team. Every loose ball, it felt like, went to the Oklahoma City Thunder last night. They just work harder for those 50-50 opportunities, and Dallas can't let that happen.
The one that stood out to me was Chet Holmgren had a 3-pointer blocked. I don't know why. This was like the most obvious, like this is 100% getting blocked, and he just shot it as if there wasn't a defender there. I forget, it might have been Derek Jones who blocked it, but it was just like a Looney Tunes attempt. I'm like, what did you think was going to happen here? It gets blocked. There's like 3 Mavericks standing around the ball as it's coming down, and somehow the ball ends up back in the hands of the Thunder. Nobody grabbed it for Dallas, and the possession ends with a Chet Holmgren dunk down the lane. And that to me was like, all right, this is the moment that it feels like the avalanche is officially coming. And the other thing is the turnovers, which you mentioned for Dallas. 15 turnovers. A bunch of those came early. I mean, both teams were sloppy early on, but especially Dallas. I mean, these were completely unforced turnovers. Guys driving in, kicking to the corner, and Kyrie threw one that was like 5 feet wide of PJ Washington and goes out of bounds. Like, Dallas was just wasting possessions early in this game. Luka also got a little banged up, right? I mean, he's wearing like an insane amount of like padding and accessories all over his body at this point. But there was at one point, I think it was late in the first quarter or early in the second quarter, he drove in and you could kind of see he landed hard on his left ankle, was kind of grabbing the top of that ankle, stayed in the game, but just didn't quite look like himself. Wasn't really getting to the rim, was settling for a lot of those step back jumpers. His game at times could be very James Harden-y. And when it's working, it's great. When it's not, it could be very frustrating to watch, like last night. I'm going to go even higher than what you said. I think they need like 70 combined points from Luka and Kyrie just about every night in this series because, OKC shot 46% from 3. That's probably not sustainable, but it could be, right? I mean, it didn't feel like this was, some night where everything was going down for OKC. I mean, there was a stretch, late in the third, early in the fourth when it felt that way, but Dallas cannot win this series unless it's getting at least 60, if not more, from Kyrie and Luka. So I think volume-wise, that's what I'll be watching in game 2. Like, how many shots does Kyrie Irving take? He's got to take more than 14.
Yeah, I think a combination of, if you go like 35 for Luka, 30 for Kyrie, we're hovering around that 65 to 70 range. And Luka has to be above. He's got to be well above 9 assists, which is what he had. He had 9 assists and 5 turnovers. It's definitely not going to get it done. He's got to be around that 15 range. He's got to put up Looney Tune numbers, and that's not a crazy thing to ask. Look at what Jalen Brunson is doing. His former teammate is outplaying him by a mile in the playoffs right now, and that's kind of what the Knicks need to be as good as they are currently, and that's exactly what the Dallas Mavericks need. They need that from Luka if they're going to win in this series. I love that he was asked after the game by one of the reporters, what do you make of your poor shooting night? Or it was something like that. Or, how do you assess it? One of those generic type of questions. And he goes, who cares? We lost. that was his response. Yeah, I don't care. Not even going to think about it. We lost the game. It doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. That's part of the reason you lost the game, Luka.
Yeah. No question about that. It's just an impressive game by OKC. You mentioned Jalen Brunson, by the way. What do you think his points prop is tonight at DraftKings?
So 37.5. I already looked at it.
There we go.
Unless it went up.
It is juiced to the under. Take that at your own peril. But
you do not listen. Here's the thing. This is an over or pass. That at this point, you cannot lay your money on a Jalen Brunson under. But I also can't bring myself to take the over on 37.5. Like, you're going to be sweating that until there's a minute and a half left in the game, guaranteed.
I mean, he had what? Did he have 21 in the fourth in game 1?
That sounds right.
Yeah, it's terrifying. I mean, he's getting calls as well. Some of those are questionable, but he's getting them. He's been getting them throughout the playoffs. He's been getting them all season. So I think it's kind of like Embiid too. It's like where some of the Embiid props were in the 30s as well, and you're like, man, he just doesn't look right. And yet, he'll go on these stretches where it's like, oh, he had 10 free throws in the third quarter, and all of a sudden now my under is completely sunk. So, I'm not going to sit here and give out a Jalen Brunson under right now. I'm not going to be that guy. At some point, the streak's going to come to an end, but I don't know when that's happening.
Yeah, definitely. I don't feel comfortable handing it out. And I tried to do that the other day with Josh Hart because I do not understand how this man has all of a sudden become Charles Barkley. So the other day in doing the prize pick videos, I handed out Josh Hart. This was for game 1. Josh Hart under 12.5 rebounds. And like, there's no way he can keep this up. He averaged 8 over the course of the season. Now, all of a sudden, he's like 17 per game. So I figured I thought that was more of an effort thing. That was, hey, look, what's Philadelphia and Dallas have the same issues. Sometimes it looks like they're loafing it. Josh Hart's going to take advantage of those situations. That's not the case. That's not the DNA of the Indiana Pacers. So I didn't think that he'd be able to rebound with the same success. Now, the annoying part is I lost it, but he only got to 13. He only got it by 1. So it's very frustrating. But I learned my lesson. Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, do not fade them.
No. Especially the Hart rebounds, man. I don't understand the physics behind this. There's no comparison. I was trying to think of like, has there ever been a player of his size, who rebounds like that? And obviously he's a good athlete, but he's not a great athlete. It's just, it's an uncanny skill. It's like Justin Jefferson, continuing to win these 50-50 balls, or honestly, like 80-20 balls. It's not like Josh Hart is just vacuuming up easy rebounds. Like so many of these are, all right, there's 3 Pacers around him, or there's 3 Sixers around him, and Josh Hart just goes like diving into a crowd and somehow ends up with the rebound. And it's been incredibly consistent. It's something he's done throughout his career, right? It's part of the reason that he's always been one of those guys that, if you're in like a shallow fantasy league, he'll go undrafted, and like every single year, I'm always picking up Josh Hart in fantasy leagues, and I'm always happy to have him.
Yeah, so I was looking at Charles Barkley because that's the best comparison I can come up with. He was one of the great rebounders in NBA history, but even he stood 2 inches taller than Josh Hart. He was 6'6",
and he was way wider. I mean, it kind of made sense. Like Barkley obviously didn't have the height, but you're like, I can at least understand why this is happening. Hart doesn't have the he was
a super athlete too,
right? Yeah, I'm trying to look up his total rebound percentage.
Dennis Rodman was 6'7", by the way. It would be another one.
Yeah. I think Rodman's almost a better comparison because I think when you look back at a lot of the, there are Dennis Rodman rebound compilations you could find on YouTube, and the type of rebounds that Rodman was pulling down, I think, are more similar to Josh Hart.
He averaged 13 rebounds per game over the course of his entire career. Incredible.
Insane. All right, let's talk about the Magic. So obviously they go down in Game 7 on Sunday. You were in the house for that one. Just a bizarre game, where we get another incredibly slow start for the Cavs. They look cooked. That for the entire first half, you're just thinking, man, like, what a way to go out for Cleveland. Big changes are coming here. And then, of course, they storm back, win that game, delay the inevitable for another 2 weeks, I suppose. I don't want to pile on Franz Wagner and Jalen Suggs. I think that there were kind of 2 narratives here on the Orlando side, which was incredible performance by Paolo Banchero, even in a loss. That was all right, I'm here. I'm going to be one of the 10 to 15 best players in the NBA very soon. 38 and 16 for Banchero. And it was almost more impressive than that because he wasn't getting any other contributions. Like the Cavs were pretty comfortable selling out to stop Banchero, and they still couldn't. But Franz Wagner, 1 of 15. Jalen Suggs, 2 of 13. I don't care how many points you're getting from Banchero. You're not going to win many games when your second and third options are combining for a shooting game like that. I don't want to rehash Game 7. It's been a few days, whatever. I'm sure you've talked a ton about it on your show. I'm much more curious about the path forward now for the Orlando Magic.
As is everybody else. How quickly fans turn their attention to the offseason. It was like one segment of Monday's show where there was a mourning period of, hey, our team lost. That stinks. So let's talk about the offseason. And that has been the show since and will continue to be for the rest of the week. They have a ton of cap space to spend. They'll be one of the most cash positive teams entering into free agency. And if you're talking about the true contenders, Oklahoma City will be in that same range, 32 plus in terms of their availability. So they can add something close to a max player. The Philadelphia 76ers are in that bucket as well. If you want to throw the San Antonio Spurs in there, you can, because they have Wembanyama, even though the rest of their rosters is not ready for it. So those are going to be the teams that probably end up as the most intriguing players in free agency. The Magic can actually get up even higher than that if they want to move off of some other pieces. So I have a graph here that'll help me explain some of this stuff. But $32 million in projected cap space, and that includes keeping Jonathan Isaac, Joe Ingles, and Mo Wagner on their team. So they have a team option on Joe Ingles. I think they probably let him walk. Mo Wagner, I would be surprised because he had a phenomenal season and his brother's on the team. And Jonathan Isaac at $17 million. He stayed healthy this year. At $17 million, he's actually a bargain now, and that looked like a lead boot sort of contract. Yeah. So if they were to let those guys walk, they could get up to $60 million in cap space. So they have a lot to work with. And I think one of the things that's often forgotten about with this team too is that they have two guys they drafted in the top 11 last year that they didn't even use. Anthony Black was the 6th overall pick. Mm-hmm. Jet Howard was the 11th overall pick. Those guys will end up being inserted into the rotation in some way by next year. I'd be surprised if that wasn't the case. So that's just part of it, and we can get into the players they may add as well.
Well, I think you bring up a good point on Anthony Black and Jet Howard, which we saw a decent amount of Black at times, kind of moonlighting in that rotation when Fultz was out of the mix. And I think the jury's very much still out on what he'll develop into. And I think his rookie season went about as expected, for a guy who I think his draft slot exceeded maybe what you would typically get from that player in year one. I don't think it was like a disappointment that he didn't play more minutes. I think it was a developmental pick, even as high as they took him. Did you see anything from Jet Howard to kind of place what kind of trajectory he's on, or is this just kind of a wash for his rookie year?
Pretty much a wash. I think it was just about getting experience on a basketball court. He's such a young player. He's such a raw talent. He spent almost in the entire season with the G League team, and it's not like he put up great numbers. Mac McClung was like a G League MVP, and so their offense ran through him, and Jet Howard was just a complimentary piece. So even at that lower level, it's not like they were showcasing Jet Howard. They were down there trying to win G League games, and he wasn't even really a part of that mix. So we really have no idea. The only time I saw Jet Howard play basketball was that end of game situation when it's a blowout in either direction, and it's hard to kind of gauge what a player is in those situations. But that's certainly part of the mix. And I think at this point, this is one of the positives of the season is that there is no question as to what this team needs. I think there's 3 things that this team really needs. Number 1 is 3-point shooting. Duh. They're the worst 3-point shooting team in the NBA and still found their way to 47 wins and almost a round 1 victory. The second is a playmaking guard. They need somebody that can help to set up their offense. And maybe they don't value that as much because Paolo and Franz take the ball up as often as they do. So maybe they don't think they need that. I think they need someone that just helps in terms of the flow of the offense and cutting down some of those turnovers. Jalen Suggs did an okay job at that, but he turns the ball over too much. Paolo still needs to work on that's the biggest deficiency in his game outside of his 3-point shooting is he's a turnover machine. So if you get somebody that is just they can create some efficiency in setting up the offense and not putting yourself in bad turnover situations, that helps. And then physicality. I think they could use they have size, but they don't have physical size. Wendell Carter Jr. is a nice big. You want someone like Isaiah Hartenstein, who is just like big and nasty. And I think he becomes a free agent at the end of the year. So those would be their 3 biggest needs. 3-point shooting, far and away number 1, though.
So how high do they shoot is the question. Do you settle for the Malik Monk, Buddy Hield, like Tobias Harris is a free agent, maybe you bring him back to Orlando, or do you go a level up? Do you chase Paul George? I know this is maybe not that appealing for a number of reasons, but like Miles Bridges could be an option. I know that the Hornets have indicated they'll probably bring him back, but who knows? I think he'd actually be a really nice fit for them if you can kind of put aside the off-court stuff. I know, like in theory, Emmanuel Quickley is going to be a free agent. I would be shocked if he's not back in Toronto, especially considering what they gave up to get him, and just losing him after a lost half a season would make no sense. But I think teams like Orlando, we've seen other teams in this spot, kind of go both ways. Where it's, do you hit the gas on I wouldn't even say rebuild, kind of that next stage? It's like, all right, we want to contend right now, or do you say, all right, we like a lot of these pieces. we want to grow Banchero as the number one option. We want to grow Franz Wagner as kind of your number two. We don't necessarily want to mess with that. We just won 47 games. Like adding Malik Monk to me makes a lot of sense. I think it's almost like too obvious of a fit to the point where I wonder if it's going to happen. But does Malik Monk actually move the needle for this team in a meaningful way? Like, is that enough? Or do Magic fans, are they already penciling Paul George in to the starting lineup?
I don't think anybody has penciled anybody in yet, but Paul George's name is probably the most frequently brought up. Him and Klay Thompson. Those are the rumors. Think about
the Klay situation first, because that's a really interesting one. Are you for the money it would take to get Klay? Is it worth it?
That last part of the question makes me say no. But if you were to just say, forget about the money for a second, do the Magic need what Klay Thompson brings to the table? Championship pedigree, knockdown 3-point shooter, team guy. He's never been the star attraction on a team that he has been on. He's always played second or third fiddle. And you don't want to bring in anybody that usurps Paolo. So he fits perfectly. And if he has the right attitude, major thumbs up on that. You're not getting Klay Thompson, prime Klay Thompson. He'd still be the best 3-point shooter on a team that needs 3-point shooting. So it's hard to look at that and say, oh, no, you don't want Klay Thompson. But at the price, you do not want Klay Thompson, because you cannot have a player like that at that age with his recent injury history clogging up precious cap space for a team that, whether it's next year or the year after, is going to be in a title contending situation. They could be OKC come next year.
Yeah.
Or the year after. Klay Thompson could impact that negatively. So money is a huge factor in analyzing Klay Thompson.
Well, I think the biggest question mark perhaps for Orlando is Franz Wagner, right? Because the reason that OKC is OKC right now is, one, SGA. And, I think if you want to say Banchero is their version of SGA, look, I'm fine with that. SGA is obviously a better and more consistent player right now, but I think it's not crazy to think Banchero could get to that level very quickly as soon as next year. The question is, do you have your Jalen Williams in place? Because as much as I like Franz Wagner, he's not Jalen Williams. Jalen Williams isn't going 1 of 15 in an elimination game. He's already at that level where you could depend on him for big shots and big games and in big moments. So if I'm Orlando, I want to secure a future in which Franz Wagner is a very high-end number 3 option. And again, you don't want to base it off of one series, one game, but I think historically, unless you have one of like the top 3 to 5 guys in the NBA, we're talking Giannis, Jokic, Luka, those type of guys. Unless you have somebody like that, you need a higher level number 2 option.
Yeah, and I don't think they're ready to move off and say that this hasn't worked with Franz. Franz is not the first player, and he won't be the last, that's really good, that struggled in the playoffs or struggled in a Game 7. This is his first playoff series. I'm surprised that clearly the pressure got to him. This was a mental thing. He's not hurt. So this is a guy that played for a FIBA World Championship for his country. Like, you would think that the moment like this, it's different, but you would think a moment like this wouldn't get to him. I think you have to wait until next year to see, even though, he's eligible for a rookie extension this year, and he's probably going to get it. So I say you want to wait until next year to make a final conclusion on that, but you would have already signed him to an extension. Here's the other part of this, is that the Magic don't have to spend money now. They really have a 2-year window to be players in free agency because of the rookie extensions to Franz and Jalen Suggs. And then in a year, they're going to sign Paolo to the max. So by the following not next offseason, but the offseason after that, they're going to have no cap space left.
Right.
So they have 2 years to spend their cash. Otherwise, it's going to wither away. So do you want to attack that now, or do you want to attack that next year? I think you're sort of wasting your time, to go back to one of your original points. You're wasting your time if you say, I know, let's get Tobias Harris. I think that sort of move is just clogs up the progression. You either go for it or sign guys that you're going to move off of in a year and get right back to the same cap space situation you're in now.
Yeah, an interesting name to me would be DeMar DeRozan, but it would be such a bad fit that I hope Orlando doesn't go down that path. I don't think they will.
Can't shoot threes.
Right. Yeah. That would just be, it'd be tripling down on a problem that you already have. If D'Angelo Russell were to shake free, maybe.
I think he's
maybe a guy
going. He's
get on.
an $18 million player option. There's no way he takes that.
You don't think he's taking the option?
I don't think so, because I think he'll make more on the open market.
I think so too. And nobody's fired up when you get D'Angelo Russell, but I think if you could get him on like a 2-year deal, a 1+1, even a 2+1 for Orlando, where you're not tethered to that long term, I actually kind of like that fit. Is it a foregone conclusion, by the way, that the Markelle Fultz era is over?
Yeah, pretty much.
I think so.
And that's part of the projected cap space.
Yeah.
The projected cap space has Markelle Fultz,
right,
and Gary Harris as the big, well-known players that are going to move off. I can sort of I can summarize this conversation by giving you my tiered list if you would like it. So
I would. We're going deep on the Magic. A tiered list would be ideal.
So I have 4 tiers that are tier 1 is going for it. You're trying to win a championship starting next year. Tier 2 is you're noticeably better. Tier 3 is you're quietly better. And then tier 4 is you got to keep them away from the roster. Okay. So I'll just give you the tiers so you can react to it, and then let me know what you think. And we'll go tier by tier. So tier 1 is Paul George, DeJounte Murray, which you would have to acquire via trade, but Atlanta's going to blow something up. And then Donovan Mitchell, who will be on an expiring contract come next year, so also via trade. So those are the going forward options.
Can I throw you Trae Young? What if he's available via trade? Do you want Trae Young?
Trae Young is on a different tier. We'll get to Trae Young.
Okay.
Noticeably better would be D'Angelo Russell. Hey, you want to knock down? You want a 3-point shooter? He shoots 41% from 3-point range and averaged 18 per game with LeBron and AD on his roster. So I'm with you. You don't get excited about D'Angelo Russell, but he does solve a lot of problems for the Magic. I think Malik Monk is on this list. Klay Thompson is on this list at the right price. And Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is also going to become available. So those are guys the Magic need.
KCP would be a great fit. He'd be a great fit for anybody, right? Not just Orlando. But I think if you look at him as, all right, how can we upgrade the Gary Harris spot? I think that would be huge. I think he kind of doubles down on what you're already doing defensively. He gives you more reliable shooting, or at least the same reliability of shooting as Gary Harris. And I think you feel better about the price for KCP than you do what you've been paying Gary Harris on this past deal, right? I think he was making like almost $20 million this past year. So it's like if you renounce Fultz and Gary Harris, that opens up another like 35 mil. I think maybe even more than that in cap space. So I think they do that. I think the other thing you need to be cognizant of, whether you want to hit the gas moderately or bring in Paul George and really go for it. What you cannot do is take a step back. I don't think you could be completely complacent here, because for an organization that's been in the spot that the Magic are for the last decade, like they won 47 games this year. You can't backslide from there. I think at the very least you need to sustain this momentum. And like you said, if you don't love the options, if you don't love some of the prices, you want to be cognizant of not overpaying, not settling for somebody who is like a B fit as opposed to an A fit who might be available next off season. But you have to keep the momentum going. And are you going to be able to build a roster that you feel good about, beating the Celtics or even a healthy version of the Bucks in the playoffs next year? Probably not. But there's a pathway here to Orlando settling in as maybe like the 3rd or 4th best team in the East for the next few years. Like, who knows what the Sixers are going to look like? Who knows what the Miami Heat are going to look like? Who knows what the Cavs are going to look like next season? I think there are all these other teams that are further along in their timeline and might be, looking ahead to a more bleak future, whereas Orlando's on the ascent. But you absolutely have to sustain that momentum.
Absolutely. Nothing is guaranteed. The Miami Heat were in the finals last year, and they were back in the play-in again. So you definitely can't rest on your laurels. But if you make the right move, there's no reason why you can't get better from where this team was flirting with a 2 seed with the roster they have now. So if you add the right piece, that becomes an expectation to at least battle. And nobody would have said that a year ago. That would have been lunacy if you had said, "Oh, the Magic will be battling for a 2 seed." They would have kicked you off of platforms like this. Next year, if they add the right piece, that's going to be a prediction from a lot of people. Not that they'll necessarily land that, but that they'll be fighting for it all year. So that's the kind of variance they have. The quietly better tier is boring, so I'll just that's like Tyus Jones and Malik Beasley. But the tier 4, this is the keep them away: Trae Young, Buddy Hield, Caleb Martin. Cannot bring those. No.
Keep him away?
Keep him away.
Okay.
Buddy Hield makes no. I have been duped by Buddy Hield throughout his career. So I'm coming to this realization now. He doesn't make anybody better. Every team he is on is worse or the same than they were before. I don't know why, but the proof is in the pudding. Caleb Martin is such a he's such a heat factory guy. If he ends up anywhere else, he is going to be terrible.
I agree.
You just know it. That is a Spoelstra. Spoelstra has a spell on him, and the second the Spoelstra spell wears off, he will become a low-level player. And Trae Young, I mean, we were all duped. Was it 2019 that he went?
2021, they went to the conference finals and lost to Giannis.
Okay. That was the year that tricked all of us.
And I don't remember which year was the Ben Simmons year, but there were a couple in there.
Trae Young is not a winning basketball player. And fun player, great three-point shooter. He fits this team terribly. You have to upgrade in terms of your offense. You can't upgrade with a turnstile on defense. It just negates the whole personality of the Magic roster. It would be like adding Trae Young to the Milwaukee Bucks, although in some ways they kind of did that already.
Well, so I agree with you. I don't think Trae Young's a winning player. I wouldn't want Trae Young on a team that I root for. I think the argument and something that you could talk yourself into if you're Orlando is don't we have the perfect team around him? Don't we have the perfect backcourt pairing and Jalen Suggs next to him, right? That's always the argument is like, well, if you have Trae Young, you need other great defenders around him. Is your argument that even with that, it doesn't matter? He's, your point of attack defense is so weak that it offsets what he brings you offensively?
I think that is definitely part of it. And then I think he's sort of a ball stopper. I don't think he's the kind of guy that helps an offense flow. So when you add those two things together, you don't need somebody, and that's the delicate balance of this, is you want someone that has tremendous on ball, that has tremendous ball skills in terms of dribbling and passing and shooting. Yet you don't want someone that dominates possessions because you already have that player. I think Trae Young is a good fit somewhere. I don't think he's a bad player. I just think he's a really bad fit for the Magic.
So one other name I want to bring up, and then we could get out of here. Anthony Simons. If you could pry him away from the Portland Trailblazers, I love that fit. I do think it's more feasible for the Magic to bring someone in via free agency for all the reasons that we talked about. One, it's becoming an appealing team to join. Two, they could create 60+ mil in cap space if they really want. If you're bringing in someone like Simons, it's a trade. Who are you trading? Obviously, you have draft pick capital that would be appealing to a team like Portland, but I don't know if picks alone get that done. Obviously, you have to match salaries in some way or another. So, there are some ways that I think you could play with some of the numbers that we're talking about with guys like Fultz and Gary Harris. But if you're looking at this roster, like, who are they willing to part ways with? Who would they have to part ways with to bring in someone like Anthony Simons?
Yeah, I think this is part of the reason why I'm not interested in Anthony Simons. He does fit the needs, the age, the sort of trajectory of the timeline of this roster. He checks all those boxes. I would also question that at this stage in the game, he's now going to be into his 7th year in his NBA career. Why would Portland be so eager to trade him when that would be like one of those situations where you go, okay, if they're willing to trade him, what do they know that we don't know? Because he's on contract for the next couple of years and he's just now entering the prime of his career. It would be kind of an odd move for Portland to say, yeah, we're out on this guy. Have fun with him though. And I don't know what the right price tag would be. I would not be comfortable moving off of, to me, there's a core 3, Paolo, Franz, and Jalen Suggs. Anybody else is negotiable. But then once you get past those 3, Portland's probably looking and saying, well, we're not interested anymore. So I think you kind of end up in gridlock.
Yeah, I think it would have to be a pick-based package. If you're willing to put Suggs on the table, maybe Portland listens. But you're right. You bring up a good point. It's like, why would Portland, a team that needs building blocks, trade away a 25-year-old in Anthony Simons, who they have under contract at a pretty good price for the next 2 years? I guess the counter to that would be if they've been given any indication that he doesn't want to be there long term, because all of a sudden after next season he's going into a true expiring in 25-26. I don't think it's off the table. But Orlando's in this weird spot where they have cap space, but they don't really have trade chips.
Right. Yeah, and I think look, you use past trades as an example of what you do moving forward. A guy like Pascal Siakam gets traded at the deadline. The biggest piece that went back to Toronto in that trade was Bruce Brown. So,
hey, RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly, right? Or we? Oh wait, no, was that the?
That was the OG and an OB trade.
OG trade. No, what am I talking about? You're right.
So, in some ways, you really look at some of the deals that have gone down. You don't have to overpay if you time it right. And that's where I think Anthony Simons, maybe I'm wrong on it, but I don't think the timing is right for Simons.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think the difference in contract, obviously, with Siakam being expiring, I think is why he, essentially goes for Bruce Brown. So,
but that's the kind of move you have to make where you go, okay, well, that's an expiring, really good player that could put us over the top, expiring contract. We bring in that player and then we pay them. That might be the way to go.
Okay. Good breakdown on the Magic, Brandon. We'll continue to talk about that team throughout the offseason. As the pod goes along through the playoffs, we'll obviously give you recaps, we'll give you previews, we'll give you bets and prize picks. But we'll start digging in on some more offseason news and notes and some previews for what some other teams might be doing this summer, in addition to continuing to look ahead to next year's fantasy season. Alex and I are currently going through a 12-round mock draft right now, which is progressing pretty slowly. I think it's like 7 or 8 hours per pick. So I was hoping we'd have more picks on the board that we could discuss today, but we will revisit that next week. Brandon, great stuff as always, man. Make sure you check out Prize Picks app, prizepicks.com. Use our code ROTOPOD, ROTOPOD. Check out rotowire.com/picks as well. Every week we're adding more stuff to rotowire.com/picks. So whether you're playing on Prize Picks, whether you're playing on another site, if you're using a traditional sports book, we do odds comparisons. We do, value projections. What are the best plays? What are the plays you should stay away from? So much to offer over at rotowire.com/picks. Brandon, enjoy the rest of your week, man. We'll talk next Wednesday.
Bye, guys.